this video, I will be discussing various operations we can do with imaginary numbers, more specifically, complex numbers. So, all these problems, we have a complex number of the form a plus bi. So we have some number in the front, and then this number attached to I in the back. The a in the front is real numbers. Those are all numbers that we know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In the back, we have some coefficient in front of I. This is the imaginary part. So we have real and imaginary numbers. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to do 3 operations using these complex numbers. So this first one, I have 7 plus 2i, in parentheses, plus 3 minus 5i. So what we're going to do with these is we want to keep the real numbers with the real numbers and the imaginary with the imaginary. So if I have 7 plus 2i plus 3 minus 5i, the real part in the front is 7, and the real part of this imaginary number is 3. So all I'm going to do here is do 7 plus 3, which is 10. And then, after I've dealt with the real part, I'm going to deal with the imaginary part. So I have 2i plus negative 5i. So 2i plus negative 5i. If I add the coefficients together there, so 2 plus negative 5, I'm going to get negative 3, and I still have I. Now, when you're doing these problems, just remember you want the real part first and the imaginary part second. So we have 10 in front, that's real. The imaginary part, negative 3i in the back. So that is adding complex numbers. So let's move on to subtracting complex numbers. Now this one is a problem that it's very, very simple, but it's very commonly missed because a lot of students get kind of lazy and just rush through it. What I suggest is taking that negative, the subtraction there, distribute it through, because that subtraction sign, that applies both to the 9 and the negative 2i. So if I distribute it through a negative times a positive 9, you get negative 9. If I take a negative and multiply it by negative 2i, negative times a negative is a positive 2i. Now there is nothing in front of this first complex number, nothing inside the parentheses, so that's going to stay the same. So it's still 4 plus bi. Once you distribute that negative through, we're just going back to what we did in this first problem. We're essentially combining like terms with the real and imaginary. So my real number 4 and my real number negative 9, we can take those and combine them together. So 4 minus negative 9 is negative 5. And then going with the imaginary part, I have a 5i plus 2i. 5i plus 2i is 7i. The last problem we're going to do with these complex numbers is we are going to multiply. Now, pay very close attention. Up here, we had addition and subtraction signs in between. So we had addition up here in between. We had subtraction here. On this last one, you'll notice there is no sign written in between the two sets of parentheses. That means it is multiplication. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these front two terms and we're going to distribute it through the second parentheses. What I mean by that is we're going to take 2 and multiply it by the first term there, 4. So we're going to do 2 times 4 and get 8. We're also going to take that 2 and multiply it by that second term, that second parentheses. So we're going to do 2 times negative 2i. That's going to give us negative 4i. Next, we're going to do the second term in this front parentheses, and we're going to distribute that through as well. So I'm going to take 3i times 4, which is positive 12i. And then we're going to take 3i times negative 2i. So 3 times negative 2, we get negative 6. I times I is I squared. As always, after we do all this, we want to combine like terms, things that are similar and like we want to combine. So looking at this, we have 8 minus 4i plus 12i minus 6i squared. What we can do is we can combine these two pieces right here. A minus 4i and a plus 12i. Negative 4i plus 12i, when we add them together, we're going to get positive 8i. Still have this 8 out front, and we still have this minus 6i squared in the back. We're not quite done with this problem. So we are dealing with imaginary numbers, and some things that you might want to recall is I, the imaginary number, that comes from us allowing to do the square root of negative 1. So I comes from allowing us to find the square root of negative 1. If I wanted to square both sides of these, so if I square the left side and square the right side, so if I square I get I squared. If I square the right side of this, so if I square the square root, remember squaring and square roots, those are inverse operations, I'm just left with negative 1. So what we know is I squared is equal to negative 1. So if I'm going back to my problem, I can replace or substitute I squared with negative 1, because we know I squared is negative 1. So instead of having negative 6 times I squared, I really have 6 times negative 1. So I have 8 plus 8i minus 6 times negative 1. If you multiply these together, that's 8. Negative 6 times negative 1, you're going to get positive 6. So what appeared to be imaginary, it's actually a real number there. Only thing left to do is clean up and combine our like terms. I have 8 and 6 here. 8 plus 6, you get 14. So we're going to have 14 plus 8i as our answer.